Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live Tuesday edition. We're here 5 days a week. We're off Wednesdays and Thursdays. Remember, if you ever miss the live show, you can always catch the replay on RotoWire YouTube. And usually I will repost those links on my X profile at Jim Coventry NFL. If you give me a follow there, you certainly could get some player threads throughout the week to try to help get you ready for fantasy football success to the best of our ability, of course. Now, we will have 2 weekly start-sit streams. Really, last week it was because of the overseas game in Germany against the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Didn't really think we'd have many for that start-sit show. It was full. And we did a Saturday show just in case. That show was full. That went over an hour. At this point, there seemed to be enough people in demand for the start sit show. I think we're just doing 2 a week going forward. We'll probably just plan Saturdays at 4 Eastern, Sundays at 11 Eastern, and hopefully we get everybody covered there. And again, we're going to be wrong, you know that, but we're going to be right a lot too, hopefully more. But we give the rationale. You make the decision. You're a smart fantasy player. Sometimes you just want to hear a little background, either can confirm your idea or maybe give you something to think about you hadn't thought about, but that's how we go. Always try for success. Delageezy, glad to see you here. All right, Monday Night Football, Chargers 27, Jets 6. Look, it's one of those things, right? A punt return for a touchdown, and then it wasn't a fumble 6, but it was to the 2-yard line late in the game. The game was out of hand at that point already. But that's the thing you can't factor in, right? And it was funny because the TV copy is saying right as that punt is getting launched that the punter is having best year of his career and he's been around. And what do you know? Leaves one a little low, and it gets returned for a touchdown. That threw the whole game off. At that point, the Jets were playing from behind. The Chargers were able to go in a little more of attack mode. But realistically, those are the things you can never predict in a game. Game script and game flow are very, very important. Delageezy asked him answering questions today. Usually, I'm not even close to looking forward to Week 10. Normally I spend Monday and Tuesday looking back, crunching film, crunching numbers, re-ranking a lot. So normally I don't really take a close look at the schedule. I took a cursory look at it, but not enough. Those I would be able to answer like toward the end of the week a lot better. I am off Wednesday and Thursday, but if you message me on X, I certainly will answer questions. And Friday, I'm back on the grid. And Charlene, good morning. Glad to see you back again. So the Chargers, Justin Herbert throws for 136 yards. Like I said, they played with the lead. They didn't have to be aggressive. And I've been saying this for a few weeks. And I got that some analysts said that Keenan Allen's going off in this game. And he did go 8 for 77. And it was a good game. But realistically, the Chargers are in trouble right now offensively because with Mike Williams done, that took away their downfield threat. Defenses walked up a little bit closer against them. They put extra attention on Keenan Allen. Now, Josh Palmer's on IR 4 weeks, but when we're looking at Josh Palmer, he still was competent. And there's less to worry about. Nobody's worried about Quentin Jonhson right now. Can he make a play? Sure, maybe, but we don't really know that. And he was going to be up against either Sauce Gardner or DJ Reed. He had no chance there. And the tight ends are not a regular functional part of the offense. In the red zone, they're utilized. So realistically, you got Austin Eckler, who, still playing great, but at the end zone, that low center of gravity is unstoppable. But again, barely over 3 yards per carry. 2 catches for 23 yards on 7 targets. He dropped 2. He's still an excellent fantasy player. He's still an excellent NFL player, but he's already showing those signs of not being the big play home run threat coming off a high ankle sprain and age working against him a little bit. He's still going to be productive for fantasy. So you're good. You start him every week. You're probably going to get a lot of RB1 weeks out of him, and you're going to be super happy about it. But I don't know that we're going to see these, 180 combined yard games. I don't think we're going to see many of those right now. And the defenses could really focus in on him because, again, I talk about it all the time. When you don't have a downfield element, teams compress their defenses. And what that does, they're allowed to shoot more gaps against the run. You can put extra attention on just 2 players, Eckler and Keenan Allen. And it's not like it's like Jamar Chase, where you're putting extra attention on him, but he could still find a way to beat you. At some point, they're going to be limited. So the Chargers, it's going to be very clunky. The Justin Herbert game, all right, he's not going to throw for 136 yards every week. That's not going to happen. but he did what it took to win. And that's all they had to worry about. They didn't want to do anything stupid, knowing once that punt return happened, they probably knew the Jets were screwed. And that's probably how it went. And the play calling kind of followed suit. And they did the right thing. They won. Now, Charlene does mention that the Chargers seem to win games. But you know what, Charlene? They played 3 good teams. And the Jets aren't a good team. They do not have an NFL offense. They played 3 games. Now, it was Kansas City, it was Miami, and it was Dallas. They lost all 3 of those. They beat the Bears. They've had I have their schedule here. I was looking at it earlier. They beat Tennessee when Tennessee is garbage when they're away from home. They beat Minnesota. But that Minnesota game, that one was where it was a crazy game. They should have lost that game. Minnesota had the ball late. They beat the Raiders by 7. They beat the Bears, and they beat the Jets. So realistically, we look at their schedule now. They get Detroit, fairly easy against Green Bay. Baltimore, they should be fine with New England. They get Buffalo later. They get Denver later. They get Kansas City. So they've got enough easy games on the schedule where they may be able to compete for a playoff spot. But if this team is in the playoffs, that defense, they're able to get by the Jets. The Jets have real offensive line issues. Vera Tucker has been down. Right tackle's an issue. And they were just getting blown up. Joey Bosa, I would say he hasn't been playing at the level. He still doesn't, but he had such a great matchup. It was like they could just pin their ears back and go after Zach Wilson once they had a lead. Anyway, we go to the other side of the ball. Just see what other comments we have about the game here. Delagizi's asking about Fields or Kyler Murray. If Justin Fields is starting on Thursday, you got to start him, I think. Carolina's terrible, and they're terrible. They have a moderate pass rush. They don't stop the run well. They got a little better. They totally don't have a secondary. And I could see another Thursday night where we get Fields and DJ Moore cooking and even a little Cole Kmet. I think Fields and Murray in his first game, I love the matchup, but I'm going to play him in GPP DFS. But in his first start, we have no idea what we're getting here. So there we go. And then, Eckler, Delagizi points out about Eckler, absolutely correct. The TD saved him this week. Yep, 100%. And Charlene, it's not perfect. It's okay. Yep, exactly. And Keenan Allen, you said was monster. Yeah, he's a great player. And I wish Mike Williams was still there because Keenan Allen would be putting up 130-yard games with consistency. Randy's in the house. Welcome. Lions will be a good test at the Chargers. I just have to actually write an article for RotoWire this week. I'll be writing one on that game from a gambling perspective. And I already think the lean, even though the Chargers are at home here, the Lions are 1.5-point favorites. And I do think when I break this game down, it's going to be ground and pound from the Lions. They should get Montgomery back. I do expect that the Chargers won't have an answer for it. And if they oversell out, then we'll see Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta shred them. Goff's not the best on the road, but he's good enough. And the Lions defense, they're for real. They're not great, but they're very good. And I think that's going to be a big test for the Chargers. I think the Lions end up probably winning that one somewhat comfortably. So we'll see. But if the Chargers can somehow win that game, that would bode really well for their playoff chance. The Jets side of the ball. Oh, what are we saying? So, all right, 3 weeks ago, Breece Hall had a big game. And then last week against the Giants, he caught the pass with 60 yards or 47 yards for a touchdown. And so he did okay for fantasy. And I still thought he could overcome the line. Yeah, I don't think so. I think Breece Hall he's a superstar player, doesn't get a lot of help from his line. Defenses don't care about Zach Wilson. We talk again, get back to compressing the field, right? Well, defenses are going to push it up, and Breece Hall's not going to have a lot of room to run. And the Chargers are not a good run defense. But again, they could commit so many bodies to Breece Hall and key on him. That's going to be a problem. And I hate it because Breece Hall is a superstar. I got to move him down my rankings. I had him up. I was probably all hopped up on a couple big plays he had. There's not going to be sustained success, and it's not his fault. 0 of his fault. Garrett Wilson, keep starting him in PPR leagues for sure. I mean, double-digit points every week in PPR leagues. Another 15 here, 7 for 80. I got wrong the call on the game. The one prop I definitely said to go with was over 5.5 catches plus money. So if you got 6 passes, it was like plus 124. I was stunned by that. And he ends up catching 7, 13 targets, but he's getting all these targets. 5.5 was like, it was always going to be in play for him. Of course, you'll get these wrong sometimes. I know how that just goes. Props, Oh my gosh. Anyway, we'll just get back to the game. There's not much else to say about the Jets. And Zach Wilson got some inflated passing yard numbers in the second half when they were in garbage time. They're not going to address their quarterback situation. Obviously, trade deadline's gone, and somebody off the street, I doubt they're going at this point. But it's a very severe injustice to a Super Bowl caliber defense that Robert Saleh, and he's a defensive guy, the fact that he refused, and I think it was him. I don't think it was the GM. Maybe Saleh's being a good teammate, but whoever it is, to irresponsibly put Zach Wilson out there on the field, I don't know what to say. And Garrett Wilson, complete superstar. If he right now, I didn't look at his aggregate season numbers. He's definitely on pace to at least match that 1,100-yard season from last year. And if he had a quarterback, I said this year, if he had Aaron Rodgers, he could have put up 1,700 yards. That would have been a stretch, but he could have done that. And what you see, he definitely could have, because this guy is winning despite no quarterback. Is next year, if he has a quarterback, assuming Rodgers comes back, aggressively target him. That's all I got to say on them. Conklin got 6 for 66. They threw 11 targets to their top 2 tight ends. Ruckert, I think, got a target too. Uzama did nothing with his. It was a team you could attack with the tight end. Conklin got most of his in garbage time. What else do we say? Charlene, should you pick up Kyle Phillips? When you do a search for Phillips, there's everybody out there. 1 L in his last name, not 2 if you search him up, just in case you're looking for in the waiver wire, you're doing like an auto type in. Just a different spelling. I always try to heads people up that. Yeah, PPR, he'll be their slot guy. He profiled to be a good slot guy. Last year in the opener, he had 6 for 66. Game 2, he zeroed, and then he got hurt and missed time, and then never really worked out. And this year, obviously, he had some missed time, but now, he looks like he's going to be that slot guy. And so far, we've seen Will Levis. He'll throw short and he'll throw downfield. He'll throw the perimeters, and I think Kyle Phillips fits into this mix. And I think Levis will utilize him. I don't think he's a high upside player, but I think he's a good floor play at PPR league. So I definitely think picking him up works out. And Delagizzi Brees looks good. Feel bad, yep. And then Garrett be worth a pickup. I don't know if you mean Garrett Wilson. He's got to be rostered in every league. If you meet somebody else, let me know. I'm not sure what you meant by Garrett there, but anyway, Randy needed to drop Keaton Mitchell 2 weeks ago. Doesn't matter. His speed is game changing. Oh my God. It doesn't matter who Keaton Mitchell plays. If he's on the field, here's the thing with the Ravens offense. They're great. They score enough points to win, but they lack team speed. And Lamar Jackson, I talk about it all the time. You get the mobile quarterback. They've got it. Defenses really have to be on their heels against a mobile, speedy quarterback like that, like insanely fast quarterback. And Gus Edwards is great, right? And so when we look at Gus Edwards, he's going to continue to get things done, but they need a speed infusion. Keaton Mitchell is like, I think 4.37 speed. Oh my God. And they need a change up because that is going to screw with defenses. I can't say he's going to be a superstar the rest of the way. And some of his yards came in garbage time. Not all of them. But yeah, Keaton Mitchell's a priority add because in this offense, they just got to get the speed on the field and it totally could work out. Johnny, Gabe Davis, I think what we're looking at is he had 3 out of 4 bad games, and then he had a stretch before then where he had a few good games. He's boom or bust. He's a perfect flex because you got the floor, but we know where the ceiling is. Just last week was a weird week. Should have been a good matchup for him. Should have been a very good matchup for him, but yet it didn't work out. And Josh Allen, I think his arm is fine. I think there's no issue with his arm. So it's just he's a boom or bust flex guy. He can have good weeks, but he also can have clunkers. So he's tough. He's not a reliable player. So if I frame how I view him, if I don't mind a boom bust guy, I have him and I keep him and I start him. But if I'm in a smaller league and I can use reliable players, then I kind of go with that. But I kind of got to look at that. And Della Geezy trade for Garrett Wilson. And then what you said, not dynasty. He's a floor play. There's no ceiling. It sucks. There's no ceiling because his ceiling, he'll eventually score a touchdown. But they scored 6 offensive touchdowns. There aren't going to be many. It's just a floor play. And in a trade, I don't know what you give up for him definitely he's a wide receiver 2, high floor, moderate ceiling. And that's what he is. So again, frame your team and see there. George Cook wants to know, trade Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and Dobbs for Eckler and Garrett Wilson. So Dobbs is going to be he's touchdown dependent, right? They don't throw a lot when they're in the Packers they have a couple games that are rougher, and then they have a real easy schedule. And those easy games, they typically won't throw the ball 30 times. And so there's a big target squeeze. So getting rid of Dobbs isn't bad. Devontae Adams right now with Aiden O'Connell. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that we're not going to see the upside of him. Aaron Jones, I think, could be a league winner. I think he's going to get better each week. He hadn't been hit much all season, so I think he's going to have a fresher body down the stretch. Is going to pay off. They got him 20 carries and 4 catches. Other side of it, I probably would prefer the Eckler and Garrett Wilson side. I like it. Because Eckler is, I pointed out earlier, high ankle sprain, aging, scoring touchdowns, but he's still productive. He's still going to catch passes. He's still going to score touchdowns. And then Garrett Wilson is an upgrade over right now what we're going to see with the Aiden O'Connell version of Devontae Adams. So I probably would take the Eckler and Garrett Wilson side. It's not like a auto run to the button and hit it, but I think it's an upgrade. And then let me see here. Admiral Nita, stream defense. Haven't really gotten down to but you gave me the opponent, so that'll help me out a little bit here because I'm not that far into it. The Raiders. Antonio Pierce hasn't playing. Max Crosby's going to be in the backfield with Garrett Wilson. We already saw how that story ended up. Yeah, I probably would go with the Raiders there. I'd probably definitely do that. Yep, Charlene picking up the direct backup running backs, the waiver wire. Yep, it is. It's drying out. Definitely pick up those players if you got stash spots because if somebody gets hurt, you might get yourself a league winner. I'm very hopeful James Conner comes back this week and need him in a lot of leagues. Love James Conner. I think he and Murray should be back. Anthony, yeah, no, definitely. It's at the expense of Justice Hill. Hill played 63% of the snaps last week. I've been pining for Hill to get out of that lineup. He just is he's terrible. He's a billion times better than I am, but he should be a special teamer. Maybe a couple passing snaps a game. But yeah, Mitchell should immediately jump into Hill's role. Gus will be the grinder. Mitchell's not a grinder. They need a grinder back too. They definitely want a 1-2 punch. They've always wanted that, right? So, Uncle Ted. Yep. Oh, I like that analogy, Uncle Ted. Keaton Mitchell is the Ravens, Devon Achane. And I got to get to some talking points here, but let me just quickly take a look here. Johnny Football, who's Debo's comp? Well, it's tough with Debo because that injury history is real. It's other than the season where he had the 1,800 combined yards, every year he's been hurt. So, and I don't know what the version of him this year, he's not the same player he was in the 1,800-yard season. So, and in terms of comp, it's hard to say it because he's in Shanahan's offense. He's, a sturdier build running. I mean, sturdy in terms of staying healthy, but in terms of being able to break tackles, he's kind of his own. He's kind of his own comp. He's not a player I see. It's like, oh, that's Debo. It's kind of a unique role he has too. And all right, Admiral wants to drop Pitts for Taysom Hill. Yeah, 100%. Look, Hill might lose touches this week, that week. 4 weeks in a row. Very regular contributor in the offense. Running, passing, receiving. Pitts is getting his 4 or 5 targets. That's it. There's no upside with Kyle Pitts. Will he have one game? Maybe. But Taysom Hill, I think it's at least 18 fantasy points, PPR, because there's receptions involved, in the last 4 games, 3-4 games. It's been at least 18 fantasy points. I don't think Pitts has scored that all season. So, yeah, 100%. Taysom Hill. And then, all right, let's see what else you got here. Randy, you agree on Keaton. A little careful with Harbaugh. But he knows he needs speed. Harbaugh's all – see, the history with Harbaugh is, even when he had J.K. Dobbins, he was putting somebody else in. He's always doing the two-man thing. I just can't see him. He clearly sees the tape. He clearly sees that Justice Hill was his rotational because he didn't have anybody. But he also realizes the team needs speed. At receiver, they don't have it. I paper Bateman's fast, but we don't see that transcend the field right now. Zay Flowers, the screen king, so there's that. So they need speed. And I think they have to know that. My guess is he goes there, but again, we never know. All right, let me get to more of the player notes I wanted to get at. We have Brandon Kravitz coming in the bottom of the hour. He's going to talk a few waiver pickups for you. All right, Dak Prescott. Look, right now, 2 big games in a row. 304 and 4 touchdowns 2 weeks ago, 376 and 3 last week. What was beautiful last week, Prescott, for the most part. Now, I know that he had touchdowns to Tolbert and was it one to Turpin maybe? But anyway, he's figuring out we got to get CeeDee Lamb the ball. That's one. Number 2, Jake Ferguson. We said it since April. Since April, we said Jake Ferguson is going to be a stud. He's a dynamic receiving threat in the middle of the field. And that's panning out. But here's what Dallas is figuring out. And I can't trust Mike McCarthy to do things right for long. But here's what I've noticed. They realize their running game is not explosive. I mean, how do I say that right? They have Tony Pollard, but it's not. He had a big week, maybe 5 weeks ago. He had a touchdown in week 1. Tony, it's so different when you are the guy as opposed to the change of pace. See what happens? Zeke Elliott was the lead guy last year. Defenses are playing at the Zeke Elliott speed, more of a physical, grinding, running game. Defenses are playing that speed. And then you bring in Tony Pollard. It's this muscle memory thing. You're playing at the speed on defense. And now all of a sudden, this fast guy comes in. Well, that's what Keaton Mitchell's going to be for Baltimore. You bring the fast guy in. Now all of a sudden, the fast guy, oh my God, look at him. He's getting 12, 14 yards, big plays. Now we come around this year. Tony Pollard's the guy. Oh, defenses are playing at Tony Pollard's speed. He no longer has the element of surprise. Also, often when Pollard came on the field, not always last year, but when he came on the field, a lot of times it was defenses would go into 5 defensive back look or 6 defensive back look. We see that with Jaylen Warren in Pittsburgh. When Jaylen Warren comes on the field, defenses normally think it's a passing situation. So they put in more defensive backs. And so he runs against much lighter fronts most of the time, not always, never 100% of the time, than Najee Harris does. And so, again, it's all this understanding how the nuance of the game works and why players are often successful, and then they go into a new situation and they're not. Can Tony Pollard eventually overcome it? Maybe. He seems like a super talented dude, right? Uncle Ted, would you rather have Christian Watson or George Pickens downstairs? George Pickens. I know it's been a couple bad games out of the last 3, but you know, I'm glad that Pickett had a game last Thursday. So if the ribs were an issue for sure. So I have to imagine that a little extra rest since he played last week, he should be a little better. He does get the ball to Pickens. And look, Christian Watson, there is no upside, none. Jordan Love can't throw downfield, and that's Christian Watson's game. So there's like no upside. All right. The JSN thing, be careful. Because they got blown out in that game by Baltimore, they normally play 60 to 70% 2 tight end sets. They went 3 receiver sets, primarily second quarter on. So it was a massive spike in playing time for JSN. That's not who the Seahawks are. They do not want to play that way. They will not play that way unless they're getting their rear ends handed to them in Baltimore like they did there. But he's that 4 or 5 target guy. He's a floor play. He's a flex play. And it's still Tyler Lockett. It's still DK Metcalf. They're not going away. JSN, it was all game. And a lot of JSN's numbers came when that game was well out of hand. So just understand the situation. That's what we're looking at here. Let's go to Aaron Jones. Talked to him a little bit earlier. I said earlier, the usage was great. And we saw his workload had been ramped up over the last few games since he's been recovering from the setback that was hamstring. 57% of the snaps. It might go up a little more. It might go up to 64, 65, maybe. I'm not no guarantee, but it might get there. But the fact he had 20 carries and 6 targets, he's the way the Packers have a chance to win because they're not going to win with their quarterback, but you can win with Aaron Jones. And I know the yards per carry weren't great, 20 for 73, but he scores a touchdown, 4 for 26 through the air. And I know defenses are going to game plan for him, but he's Aaron Jones. And again, I said he hasn't been hit much this year because he hasn't been on the field a lot. So I think he comes in a little fresher down the stretch. Remember, everybody who plays all year, equally, they kind of all get beat up through the season. And so everybody kind of, it has the same attrition rate. Sometimes these players who miss games, assuming the hamstring is fine, which the coach said it was, now he's a full go. Yeah, Aaron Jones, I still think he has a chance to be a very, very strong producer the rest of the year, like top 12 running back. He's probably not much more than that. He'll have the occasional spike week. He gets those, but I don't think there'll be that every week. Rachaad White. Last week he scored the 2 touchdowns. All right, beautiful. But and game script worked out for them. It's kind of a wild game. He had 20 carries. He had 9 and 13 the prior 2 weeks. So I told somebody in a start sit question, they had half PPR and he had other options. I go, we'll go with the other options. If it was full PPR, I would go with Rachaad White. Again, he had 4 for 46 through the air. Just didn't see the 20 carries coming. Never saw that in my wildest dreams because, again, 9 and 13 the weeks prior. Usually, if he gets 4 yards per carry, it's great, but he usually doesn't. And in this game, he didn't. He didn't make 4 yards per carry, but he got the 2 touchdowns. So it was a huge game for him. But you start him, if you're in PPR, you start Rachaad White every week. You don't ask any questions. 6, 7, 4 targets, and he catches like all of them. And that's what he's caught. He's caught his last 17 targets in 3 games. Caught all of them. That's huge for PPR. Don't expect a lot on the ground from him. Again, Houston is bad against the run, so it was a great matchup. I just never saw 20 carries. But, yeah, you play him every week. And playing Tennessee this week, Tennessee hasn't been the great run defense they were. Kareem Hunt. So the usage is not good. He plays about 30% of the snaps every game, but he gets the ball a lot. He gets 10 to 15 touches a game. So there's that. Yards per carry, no great shakes. And the targets, he actually only has 3 targets over the last 3 games, but he's a regular in the red zone. He is their red zone back. So he scored 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. So what Kareem Hunt is he's a touchdown-dependent flex. Because if he gets those 10 to 12 touches, he doesn't find the end zone, you're looking at a maximum of about 6 fantasy points. But when he finds the end zone, you got double digits. So there's that. Wide receiver risers. T. Higgins, fully healthy. Burrow, fully healthy. So there are some weeks where Jamar Chase is going to dominate those targets, right? But that said, look, Higgins is a star player. Say what you will. When he plays Baltimore, be a little nervous. Baltimore does really well against them. This week, yeah, Houston's a top 6 pass defense. And they've been since last year. I don't know how. Their corners are good, but there's nothing that says, oh, my God, scary. They're good. They've been good. The only game they were bad was against Atlanta. In that game, they oversold out to stop the run, and it cost them. But obviously, you're betting on Joe Burrow here. Definitely betting on Joe Burrow here. So, so that's a good thing. He just mentioned Tank Dell. Tank Dell's matchup dependent. We said going into that game, I said that Dell had a massive ceiling in that game because the place you attack Tampa Bay is in the middle of the field. And we know Dalton Schultz, 100 yards, Dell, 100 yards. They can't cover in the middle of the field. And so that was just like an automatic. But Dell's going to have those, 3 for 20 games. He's going to have those too. But he's going to have the big games too. He's a boom. He's not quite, but oh man, the guy, Will Fuller. It's kind of like a Will Fuller vibe going on there, right? That's what we kind of got there. All right, let me see. We got Brandon Kravitz coming in about 2 minutes here. He'll probably be here any minute. And see what we got here and go back to a couple more players. Jahan Dotson. Wow, back in the circle of trust here. He's getting the targets, and now 2 weeks in a row, he's got the production. It seems like he and Sam Howell have kind of figured it out. They've gotten the same page. Minimum top 40 receiver. There's more upside than that. He's a superstar. He's drafted in the 16th pick in the draft. It was a very fair draft pick of where they took him. So we definitely say we're going to go with that. So I want to make sure we got one thing here. Brandon Kravitz will be coming in soon. So I make sure he didn't send me a message that he needed a link. I'm sure I sent it to him. Jahan Dotson right now, at least as a wide receiver. I have top 40, but if you're starting a third receiver and you don't have anything lights out, put him in. He's a talented superstar. And again, with Howell getting him the ball, that definitely works out. And then we look at Deontay Johnson. Wow. The 3 games since he's been back. 5 for 79, 8 for 85, 7 for 90 and a touchdown. Back to that PPR high floor player. The touchdown last week was great. Don't count on those all the time because Pittsburgh's not going to probably be a high-scoring team. Now, I should mention Najee Harris real quick. With Najee Harris, oh my gosh, Pittsburgh actually ran some under center run game, and it made a massive difference. So Najee Harris is back on the grid. Brandon Kravitz, welcome in. We are now technically a little more than halfway through the season.
Yeah, it's almost hard to believe at this point. We've put a lot of hard work in. Hopefully it's paying off for everybody out there.
We are ready for some week 10 Waiver Wire Talk. And every week we bring Brandon Kravitz in. You follow him at Brandon Kravitz on the X and other social media platforms. Brandon will tell you about his work and where you can find him later. But Brandon, let's get right into it. Who are some quarterbacks, two of the quarterbacks that you like for waivers this week?
Got to look the way of Josh Dobbs. He showed us on Sunday what he could do in limited action. 3 total touchdowns, 66 yards rushing. We love that in fantasy. Completed 20 of 30 throws, and he did all of this without Justin Jefferson in the lineup. So you imagine that the upside is even higher with the best receiver in the game. So if you're in a bind at quarterback, there are some really good ones on bye this week. Patrick Mahomes, you may have heard of him. Tua, Jalen Hurts. Also, Baker Mayfield. Don't look now. This guy has been a top 12 quarterback over the past 3 weeks. Back-to-back games with over 230 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He gets a Tennessee defense this weekend that can be had through the air, and they just traded away their best safety as well. So those are 2 guys that I'm looking at for sure.
Tell you, Brandon Kravitz and all my super flex league, my third quarterback super late was Baker Mayfield. And man, I have in leagues with Watson where I had to play him. And it's just, man, Baker Mayfield has been like the super flex savior because, man, he has just been a solid floor guy with enough points each week. When you mentioned Josh Dobbs, it was ridiculous. He had no reps with the offense during the week.
Right.
He didn't know any of the offense, the terminology. So in his earpiece, until the 15 seconds, what Kevin O'Connell's trying to do is he's trying to explain, this is the play call. This guy's going to be open on the left side. Like on that touchdown to Powell, he told him, all right, you're going to drift to the right. And when you look to the left, Powell's going to pop open. That's exactly what he told him. Bink, touchdown. Oh my God. He's an astrophysicist, dude.
Well, I was going to say, it helps when you're ever the mind of a rocket scientist. I think digesting football plays becomes a little bit easier.
Wow. It was miraculous. Love the guy. Two great calls on there as usual, Brandon. Brandon, why don't you tell us about the highest profile waiver wire, the move that everybody may not know. So you need to give them the skinny on your waiver wire running back.
Yeah, this is like hitting a ball off a tee, Jim. I'm going to go Keaton Mitchell, the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this is where you may call me crazy. I think this is an empty the wallet situation. Mitchell is a burner, 9 carries, 138 yards, and a touchdown. We've seen big plays from him, not just this past week, but earlier in the season. I see a lot of Devon Achane in him in terms of just the way that he runs. He looks different than everybody else out in the open field. So productive and so different in terms of what he brings to the offense. They can't keep him off the field. Also, this feels more strategic than it does fluky. Earlier in the year when we saw him pop off, that was late in a game in a blowout where it was more mop-up duty than anything else. He had the same number of carries as Gus Edwards and Justice Hill in the first half. So this isn't just a mop-up duty situation. I think he's the most talented running back they have. They have to find a way to get him involved, and I want him on my fantasy team for the stretch run because this could be the guy that, we always talk about league winners. League winners are guys that help you when you get to the playoffs. Keaton Mitchell has the potential to be that guy. So whatever fab you have left, I'm throwing it on Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah, we had talked about him a little earlier in the show, and the thing is, they need speed on that offense besides Lamar Jackson, and Gus is going to have his role, but they need to have a second guy, and like you said, Mitchell, it could be extremely fun to watch. And we also talked about how defenses, like if Gus is the hammer, teams are playing at that speed, like they're playing the Gus speed, and then when you bring in Mitchell, the defense, like the Tony Pollard of last year, when you come in for Elliott, defense isn't playing at his speed. They're playing at Elliott's speed, and you come in and you're even that much faster. So, yeah, exactly. I love how you said empty the wallet on him. I think that's important to say. Empty the wallet. Brandon Kravitz is telling you to do that because he realizes the upside potential of this player. Is it guaranteed? No. But at this point of the season, we're week 10 right now.
Yeah.
And then at some point, because these opportunities don't come by often. Any final words?
Yeah, and I want to back up that point by saying I'm talking about those that have been managing their dollars but spending them. If you're somebody that for whatever reason you save this Monopoly money like you're actually going to get it at the end of the year, I wouldn't spend 100% of a 100% budget on him. But for instance, I'm in a league where I've got 50% of my money left. I'm using it on Keaton Mitchell. Hopefully nobody that's in that league is watching us right now. but I'm using that in that situation. So when I say empty the wallet, I mean empty what you have left, assuming that you've been spending but saving at the same time.
Yeah, and we have a few more players to go over, but those who are in the chat, we'll answer a couple of your questions at the end. We'll have a little time for that. Let's go to wide receiver, Brandon. Give me a couple options that we could look at here.
Let's go Noah Brown of the Houston Texans. He was the fourth option for this team when the season started, maybe even the fifth if you want to count Dalton Schultz. But with the Robert Woods injury, he's a factor in the pass game now. And if CJ Stroud is going to keep playing the way that he's playing, he is going to be a factor for you in fantasy. I don't know if you've noticed, but they don't run the ball very much in Houston. 17 carries in a close game, too. This wasn't like a game script that got away from them. 2 of those 17 carries went to Tank Dell. So really only 15 carries to running backs. Noah Brown has flex appeal in deep leagues for sure. And Odell Beckham Jr. is another one. Tough to trust long-term, but if we like this Ravens offense, we want pieces of it because it's red hot right now. Also, over the last 3 games, Beckham has a 21% target share and a 28% air yard share. So he's worth a look. I would just say don't get your hopes up when it comes to Odell. The name exceeds the fantasy value, but there is fantasy value.
You know, what was interesting with Noah Brown, the entirety, you mentioned CJ Stroud, very interesting in that game. And when I was previewing it, we were concerned that they had Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis on the outside, so we thought the outside might not work a lot, but they were very attackable in the middle. So we like Tank Dell as like a high upside play. Well, Jamel Dean left that game, I think, in the first quarter with an injury. As soon as he went out, it was like a piranha attack. They realized, oh, man, Zion McCollum or whoever else he got, that Stroud just was ruthless. And 470 yards and 5 touchdowns later, completely shredded the undermanned Bucs defense. What a show. But like you said, Noah Brown, Odell Beckham. What kind of budget are you putting on those guys?
I think for Odell, I'm sub 5%. Probably somewhere in the 1 to 3 range. Noah Brown, I think I would hover around 5%. And I think for those 2 guys, very dependent on what your roster looks like. Unlike a Keaton Mitchell situation where I just want to add running back depth, I almost don't even care what my roster looks like because you can never have too many depth pieces at running back. At wide receiver, I'm not trying to create too many difficult situations for myself. If you're loaded at the position, you can be hands off. These are guys that you can throw into your starting lineup if you need it. So spend accordingly, but don't go crazy.
Now, tight end, give me a couple options there.
I'm going to go Cade Otton of the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, obviously, we love the pieces of the fallout of the Houston-Tampa Bay game from this weekend is we actually have some fantasy gems here. I'm noticing a trend in the players that we're talking about. Cade Otton has had at least 4 targets over the last 3 games, so it's not like this is just a one-game standout. It was his best, but he out-targeted Chris Godwin on Sunday, second in the team in receiving, 2 touchdowns on the day. Baker, like many game managers around the NFL, has always relied on involvement from the tight end. Cade Otton probably here to stay, and we've noticed the tight end position getting a little bit deeper. I think he's part of that equation. Also, I would take a look at Jack Stoll or Albert O. Curious to get your thoughts on these guys. Goddard has a fractured forearm. It appears to be a situation where he's going to be out a month. They're on bye this week, so this isn't a situation where you slot one of those guys into your lineup. I would assume Albert O would be the target option here just because he's the better receiving tight end. But I would want a piece of the offense if we figure out who that guy is.
Yeah, exactly correct. And from a Goddard perspective, not having to do with the waiver advice you gave, but for Goddard, he at least has 13 days without a game, and he won't be ready then, but that might buy him a little time to miss not too much. But like you said, in the short term, yeah, Philly uses their tight end, so definitely looking there. Now, Cade Otton, he plays almost every snap as well. I think he's been off the field like 3 snaps over the last 3 weeks total. So that also adds to the fact that, hey, when you're on the field and he runs a ton of routes, so great call on Otton, but he is definitely heating up fast. How about defense special teams, Brandon?
I'm going to keep it pretty simple here. Both of these teams play each other, the Bears or the Panthers. So the way that I'm looking at it for this week, Bryce Young is a turnover machine. This guy cannot help himself in giving the ball to the opposing team. So we love that for fantasy purposes if you've got the opposing DST. That makes me lean Bears as the defensive pickup for just a 1-week usage. But if Justin Fields isn't cleared by Thursday, You could just as easily go the other way with this and take the defense that's going up against Tyson Bagent. So I would just monitor the Justin Fields situation. If you have to pick up one right now, I would go with the Bears, but I would just as easily flip-flop that if Justin Fields is out.
And also, Brandon, like you did with those streamer defenses, the Bears are the home team here too, and there's always a little micro advantage of that as well. So yeah, the Bears are the call, like you said. But if no Justin Fields, great call there. A couple quick questions in the chat. Let's see who we might have missed. Let's take a look here. Should I trade away James Conner? It's on the screen, and Dalton Schultz for Josh Jacobs. That's from Preston. So trade away Conner and Schultz for Josh Jacobs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think in a vacuum, I would definitely do that. Jacobs seems to have, like many Raiders players, risen from the dead after Josh McDaniels is fired. We know the talent that he has, and if they're going to continue to play a rookie quarterback, then they ought to lean on their best offensive player, not named Devontae Adams. That would be Josh Jacobs. I would make sure that you can go find a viable replacement at tight end, though.
100%. Cade Otton, just like Brandon told you a moment ago.
And make that trade and pick up Cade Otton, then you kind of I always view trades like that. Not just the player I'm getting back, but also the player I'm picking up on waivers to replace the position that I'm letting go.
Charlene brings up she likes Donovan Peoples-Jones, physical receiver, good jump ball getter, better than Reynolds. He's different. The one thing that teams count on, we saw this in Cleveland. He played 88% of the snaps, but he got 0 to 4 targets. He's a phenomenal blocker. And so what I see, Peoples-Jones is going to be on the side of the field on rundowns, and then Jamison Williams will sub in for him on obvious passing downs. Josh Reynolds is his own entity. He's a possession receiver, great chemistry with Jared Goff, and he is needed on those specific intermediate routes. So it's sometimes not a matter of being better than somebody else. It's just a matter of the role that you play. And sometimes you're such a dang good blocker, Alan Lazard, there's a bunch of these players, and they don't get targets as much because they have such a vital role to the team. Any comments there?
Yeah, when Donovan Peoples-Jones was traded from the Browns to the Lions, I thought that it was an immediate indictment on Jamison Williams more than anything else. When you look at the success that Donovan Peoples-Jones had in Cleveland, a lot of that was on deep routes in the play action game. And that's an area where Detroit can really expose defenses because you have to pay respect to David Montgomery when he comes back and the way that Jahmyr Gibbs has popped off. Well, that guy should be Jamison Williams in the Detroit offense, and he just hasn't really put it all together. They need somebody that can take the top off and really keep those safeties honest in terms of the play action game. So I don't think it's a Josh Reynolds. Like you said, nothing against Josh Reynolds. He's going to play his role. Amon-Ra St. Brown carved out a very specific role. Sam Laporta, I view this as an indictment on Jamison Williams. And if you want to add Donovan Peoples-Jones as a speculation, go for it. Definitely can't put him in your lineup until you see it.
And then Admiral Nita asks, rest of schedule, standard scoring, Dameon Pierce, Khalil Herbert, who's expected back this week. He practiced already, or Keaton Mitchell. I think I know the answer to this one, Brandon.
Yeah. I mean, call me a prisoner of the moment, but I need upside at this time of the year. Dameon Pierce has shown none of it. He's been outplayed by Devin Singletary, who is the epitome of an average running back in the NFL. Khalil Herbert, if he comes back, he probably takes over the top spot, but D'Onta Foreman has been running the ball really well,
right?
And he most likely ends up in a timeshare. You could easily say, hey, well, Keaton Mitchell's in a timeshare too. Yeah, the difference is he's in a timeshare in Baltimore's offense where the defense is keyed in on the quarterback. So I want all of that. I think Keaton Mitchell does have the potential to be a league-winning type, Devon Achane light as we go down the final stretch of the season.
And Charlene tells us to have a good weekend. For me, she knows it's my weekend. She knows I'm off on Wednesday, Thursday.
Right.
Anthony asks, so this is a question I was trying to think about as well. You got great point you make about the Philly tight ends and maybe picking one up. Is there a chance that Julio Jones, who I think he played 25% of the snaps or so, is there a chance that if Goddard's out, they go to a few more 3 receiver sets? I know they don't want to overuse Julio, but is there a chance that Julio's more used in the red zone?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's the best way to use him at this point in his career. He's still a big physical body. It's not like the guy isn't so old he started shrinking. So I'm still thinking that he can be a guy that can be utilized in the red zone. I'm not going wild with these Eagles tight ends. We're talking about deep leagues where you are struggling to find somebody. It's hard to find good tight ends on the waiver wire, and these guys are. It would only take one good game from Albert O or Jack Stoll for everyone to rush to the waiver wire. So it's more of a peek ahead of what could be. But yeah, I mean, Julio Jones, they'd be smart to get him more involved, and they have so many weapons that. They don't even need to. Okay, we don't have Dallas Goedert. We'll just get Devonta Smith hasn't even had that many targets over the last several weeks. So how about just getting him more involved?
Oh my! Yeah, I had a flirtation. Speaking of my tight ends on the wire, I had a flirtation with Michael Mayer a few weeks ago, and that did not end up very well. I loved it, and I went for him, but yeah, unfortunately. Oh well. Very quick. We'll get out of here in a moment. Isaac offers must be Garrett Wilson for his Jonathan Taylor. I imagine JT is only Jonathan Taylor. There's no other JT, right?
I mean, I'm sure there's another JT, but I don't know anybody else that's referred to as JT.
So, I mean, that's an easy one. Whoever Jonathan Taylor, that's what you want, right? For running backs are always more valuable than receivers.
Yeah, so it says okay. I don't know. In my head, I saw M.Y. Garrett, and I was thinking Myles Garrett, and I'm thinking IDP leagues, and my mind went in a completely different direction. So you're thinking Garrett Wilson or Jonathan Taylor. If that's the case, you got to go Jonathan Taylor. He's completely taken over the Indianapolis backfield. Zach Moss now finally, it took a while to get here, relegated to a spell back handcuff sort of role. Not somebody that you can be too excited about in terms of a flex option. Still used, but Jonathan Taylor dominated carries on Sunday.
And then Pate asks, we already know we're empty, like Brandon said, we're emptying the wallet on Keaton Mitchell. I just want people are still thinking about Leonard Fournette. Is it? And we brought him up last week. As of right now, do you see him being a factor in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, the fact that James Cook couldn't get going on Sunday Night Football definitely leads us to believe that Leonard Fournette's going to get some run. There's a reason why they brought him in. They want to get off in between the tackles. That's what we said after they picked him up. Now they need it more than ever. James Cook, he's a flashy running back when he gets going, but he's had a hard time getting momentum in that backfield. So they're going to use whatever is at their disposal to find some semblance of a run game. And my guess is he is a factor. I'd still much rather have Keaton Mitchell, but if Leonard Fournette's out there and you get space, he's worth an ad at this point.
Brandon, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
At Brandon Kravitz, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, across the board, and daily on the Fantasy Bites podcast, all part of the RotoWire network. That's a 5-minute episode every single day, breaking down what you need the NBA and Major League Baseball when that comes back around. Also, now a part of the Fantasy Basketball podcast on the RotoWire network. So you can also find me there every Wednesday. That's the NBA Fantasy Basketball podcast, all part of the RotoWire network.
So make sure you're following Brandon and all his work. Johnny, you had a quick question. Cleveland or Chicago? Start Cleveland every week. I don't care if they're playing the best offense in the world. Keep them on your roster. For Brandon Kravitz, I'm Jim Coventry. Everybody have a great rest of your day.